Welcome, Username Nerd News. My name is Mike Hewitt, and today we are in Columbia, Missouri with Steamworks and Shadows, and we are with Ben Watkins, how you doing, and Jashin Lin. And for those who don't know a lot about steampunk and that genre, can you tell us a little bit about it?
In the shortest form, Victorian age science fiction.
And I've seen steampunk in a couple of different ways. There is the kind of the 1800s, like I said, Wild Wild West with like Will Smith kind of thing. I know that's not the best to compare that to Steamworks, and I'm sure that is a smack in the face to steampunk, really.
Aesthetically speaking, the movie was very pretty,
yes,
and it had a great art director, and it had a great production designer, but the writer fell victim to a producer who had just left another movie and was like, no, change the ending, I want a spider. And it just like... So it's a Hollywood thing, but overall, the movie represents steampunk visually very well.
And then there's the other version that I see with like Sky Captain Tomorrow. Is that considered steampunk as well?
That's Dieselpunk, which is the same concept as steampunk, but it takes place in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s.
Very interesting. I did not
different
know
set
that.
of technology, basically.
It's now sort of coagulated into this whole umbrella thing called timepunk, or retrofuturism, which basically means a time period with more advanced technology than it did in history. So you have anything ranging from stonepunk, the Flintstones, through clockpunk, which is the Renaissance, through rococo punk, which is the 1700s, and then steampunk, and then dieselpunk, and atompunk, and cyberpunk, and there's a lot of those. A lot.
Yeah.
Wow,
I made a graphic.
Yes. Yeah.
It has 4,000 notes on Tumblr.
And you guys are super busy with Comicons everywhere. You guys are going to be at Planet Comicon. Can you tell us a little bit about Planet Comicon and what you guys are doing there?
So for Kansas City, Planet Comicon is the largest Comic-Con there, and we are the steampunk representation for Planet Comicon. So they have an entire corner of the convention is reserved for fan groups, people that dress in costumes and bring props and set up photo ops and allow people to come in and just learn about those fandoms. And so our area will be all about steampunk. We'll have a time machine, and we'll have an automaton that's on display, and we'll have tables of stuff, and then we'll have costumed characters that can talk to you about steampunk and talk to you about our web series and just kind of inform the public about this unique and cool thing.
So that section of Planet Comicon, the fan groups, is that a new section? I know it was in 2015, but was that the first year?
Yes and no. So fan groups have always been a part of Planet Comicon. It's something that they do value in bringing in. The 501st Legion of Stormtroopers was a really big part of that in the early years and running their charity for the convention. And then last year, they expanded the fan group section, opening up an entire new part of the convention and assigning that just for fan groups so they could bring in even more people. And so I got in contact with the 501st because they were looking for some things, and I know some of those people, and we talked about it, and then we got in, and they wanted us to come in and be a part of it. And they've expanded from Star Wars and steampunk to G.I. Joe and superheroes, and they just kind of keep growing. And Planet Comicon, I hope, will continue to value the fan groups and allowing the public to be informed about what we do and more of their local scene.
When it comes to creating steampunk stuff, where do you draw your inspiration from?
Steampunk is an aesthetic instead of a genre, so it can be sort of settled on top of just about anything. So whatever you're nerdy about already, you can steampunk it. In fact, it's become a running joke at conventions. I'm steampunk Sailor Moon, I'm steampunk Deadpool, I'm steampunk Joss Whedon, Personally, I was introduced to steampunk in high school through anime, because there were several steampunk animes that floated across my attention span. But I didn't get involved with it until the Pirate Festival that we met at, and so it was Steampunk Pirates, and then then I started just studying the historical period, started getting all this. So that's the other vector that a lot of people get in through the history. They know a lot about what happened, and then they want to start asking what if. So what if they had steam power a lot earlier? What if they had magic? What if
What if monsters were real?
What if monsters were real? What if the Native Americans had risen up and rebelled? Or, all sorts of alternate history kind of things. For me, personally, my inspiration is fantasy. Lady Jade Summers, my character, is a fantasy version of me if I was in a steampunk age. And rich
and fabulous.
Exactly. So there's a lot of wish fulfillment that goes into it, too. You see a lot of lords and ladies in steampunk.
What does a steampunk Josh Wheaton look like?
Joss Whedon, but he has a steampunk arm.
Gotcha. So some of these things, do you actually know what they are, or do you build them just to look cool and don't really have an idea of what they do? They just kind of sit there.
Mainly, what our group does is we come up with a story. We're writers, actually, at heart. All of us have done some sort of original story writing, fan fiction writing, role-playing writing. And so a lot of our characters live in our heads, and then what comes out is based on what we've already come up with. And of course, does it look cool is an important question, definitely.
But does it serve the story
yes.
is the most important question.
Yes, because otherwise you get a lot of what we see where steampunks are, they're just gluing gears on it. And while that is a perfectly valid way to get into the hobby, if you want to grow in the hobby, start thinking about story.
So some of these pieces, can you explain this piece right here? Go ahead.
So in episodes 6 and 7 of Steamworks and Shadows, thank you, Miss Vanna White. Sorry.
We think we're funny.
We do think we're funny. That's how we got into this.
I know.
Anyway, so in episodes 6 and 7 of Steamworks Shadows, a couple of our heroes face an enemy that is able to throw lightning. And so this is a backpack that is worn by the bad guy, and it has lightning that runs up the brass rods and essentially gives him some additional power in order to zap lightning at the heroes. And they have to figure out a way to defeat him. It was made with a rock tumbler. If you can see it in the profile now.
I see it.
It's a rock tumbler with a little piece covering that up, and some wire wound around a piece of PVC that's glued in place, and curtain rod. And then this is
Vacuum tube?
Vacuum tube. Yeah, vacuum hose.
Now, do you look on the web to figure out, or is this all in your head? You just go down Walmart and say, okay, that's a lightning rod right there.
No, I don't even go to Walmart.
Okay.
I go into the back of my garage, which you guys haven't seen yet, but it's shelves upon shelves of random stuff. And that's literally how I create, and it's how a lot of our other crew creates as well, because I was the one that had all the stuff. And so people would come over, and we have a few pictures of that, right?
Yeah.
Of us making stuff.
Yeah.
In the garage in here, where there's just stuff strewn everywhere, and people are just randomly assembling things until they come out with something that they're like, okay, yeah, this looks like, a power tool thing that my engineer can use, or, oh yeah, okay, we made this little wrist communicator thing so that we can talk to each other even if we're not in the same scene.
A lot of our group, they had already done some form of cosplay or Renaissance festival, or they were engineers, and so a lot of people already had some sort of design and crafting experience, which is why they could just look at a shoebox of stuff and make it.
How would somebody that's completely brand new get into steampunk?
It depends on what they want to do specifically. Like I said, it's an aesthetic, so you can put it down on top of just about anything. Steampunk actually started out as literature first. None of this existed in the 80s, which is when it first became a concept. It was just a bunch of science fiction novel writers tossing ideas at each other and writing things. And it got out into the real world more in the early 2000s when goths discovered brown and put goggles on their top hats. So basically, if you are a writer or an artist or a crafter or a filmmaker or a photographer or any conceivable art platform out there, you can get into steampunk. Now, specifically, when most people want to get into steampunk, they want to get into the social aspect and they want to get into the costuming aspect. So the social aspect, just Google it. Because chances are there's somebody in your community who is doing something involving steampunk, and if not, you can start it. At conventions, we usually have steampunks wandering around somewhere, and you can talk to them about it. And to get into costuming, there are tutorials galore. But the easiest possible way is to look into your own closet already, because chances are you have slacks and a button-down shirt and a vest. And that is a base costume right there. Just throw a top hat on it and find a pair of goggles or something. And so from there you can build. And then you go thrifting, you find really ruffly shirts, you find cool old fabric that you can cut up, and then if you're a woman or a man, you can just get a corset, throw it on top of a dress, instant steampunk, that kind of thing. And then you just sort of gradually build it up as you go along. We are constantly a work in progress.
So do they almost always start with like a Victorian kind of look and then build from there?
That is where most people start, because that is the most prevalent look. Definitely, when you Google steampunk, it is almost all European-based, British Victorian stuff. There's not even that much French steampunk stuff or anything like that. There's been a small minority of steampunks that have been trying to change that. Like, here is my costume. My character, Lady Jade Summers, is based off of me, and I'm of Chinese American heritage. So she's Chinese, and so I wanted to design the costume to be based off of historical Chinese fashions. And that's something that a lot of steampunks have been trying to do in recent years. Diana Foe of Beyond Victoriana has been running a blog for years where she talks about non-European history as inspiration for people to do non-European steampunk, because a lot of people zoom in right on British steampunk, and it does get kind of the same after a while.
Yes.
But there are whole continents out there.
Mm-hmm. This is part of the judge costume. Can you tell us a little bit about, each piece?
So this is a thigh holster on his left leg to carry some of his monster hunting accessories. So standard wooden cross to help protect against vampires and other things that don't like it. And then we have two different pairs of handcuffs. We have little handcuffs there and even smaller handcuffs there.
I was wondering if you're going to explain this, but yeah.
So these handcuffs are for leprechauns and other small peoples. And then these ones are for fairies and brownies, which are even smaller people. The syringe is lycanthropy cure, or thropy cure in general. So if he runs across a werewolf that is on its first full moon, he can just turn it back into a man instead of having to kill it.
Very handy.
Very handy. And then the flashlight, which is totally an original piece. Like, I didn't paint this. This is what it was.
Oh, really?
It is a brass flashlight that was painted black. Stripped the black paint off of it and it looked really cool. But it has a crystal for its light, and basically it illuminates spectrums that Judge would not otherwise be able to see, meaning he can see the spirit plane and be able to see ghosts, essentially. And then the little bottle of sparkly stuff. The label has worn off, unfortunately, but in my early days of costuming as Judge, this was given to me as a gift at the very first steampunk convention I went to, because the person was so enamored with my outfit and loved it so much. And so she gave me a small bottle of shiny things, and it said Edward's Ashes.
I want to thank you guys for letting us come out, and you guys are going to be at Planet Comicon. What's your Facebook?
We are at facebook.com/Steamworks and Shadows, and you can watch the web series on YouTube.
Thank you.
I want to film a film someday of Judge putting the handcuffs onto a fairy.
You know what? Those gnomes are slippy little buggers.
Basically duck down under the table.
All right, so you asked the question, and I'm just going to be like...
Okay, stop. Don't go to the next YouTube video or channel or skip or don't do anything. Real quick, 5 seconds. We have 3 different channels. Please subscribe to them. Username Nerd News, username Nerd Comics, username Nerd Games. We have separated them out into 3 ones. Choose all of them or just one to subscribe to. You'd love it. I promise you, we'll give you great content. It'll show up in your feed. You'll love it. Just real quick click. It doesn't take but a few seconds. You'd be awesome. Thank you.